All right. We are live. Hello, everybody. Um, I just thought that I'd get some of my ideas out here. I've already done a live stream, two live streams actually on what to do. Both there was one with there was one from my old Geocon quick takes, and there was one from the and then there was that Uber soy discussion that I had afterward. By the way, in case you don't remember, Uber soy is going to just a quick update. Uber soy and I are going to have a debate, um, either this Friday or this Saturday, although that's subject to change. So be on the lookout for that. Um, anyway, uh, and I've been I don't know if any of you have been looking at the distributists live streams lately. I mean, he had his quote unquote fail stream. I haven't watched the whole thing, but I watched the first video of it, and it was pretty decent. But the kind of drama on Telegram he was alluding to, I was unfortunately a part of it, and that was a rather unpleasant experience for me. But as with all things, when you get limits, when you get lemons, you have to make lemonade out of them. And I started thinking about, well, okay, what should right wingers do? Because that's really what that debate was about. He was trying to argue that what I do on my channel, which is talk about ethical theory, specifically applied ethics, is just it's just uh, it's just mental onanism. It's basically just people talking about random. It's just people talking around in circles, spinning the wagons as it is, and there's not really any kind of point to it. And that's the thing, right? The thing that separates the thing that separates theory making from just mere mental masturbation is the is the is that there has to be a point to it. That the point to it can't be about the journey. It's about it can't be about the journey. It has to be about the destination. It can't be about the thinking itself. It can't be about the search. It has to be about the discovery. What greater truth are we trying to uncover by doing our theory crafting, by talking about these abstract ideals, quote unquote? Um, and it got me thinking about, well, what's the point of my channel? Why do I do things? Um, in all honesty, the what I've always thought the point of my channel was to reach out to somebody, and it doesn't really have to be a lot of people. But I do think that one day there will be a time where my videos will be seen by somebody out there, and that will change their minds and get them thinking about life in a way that is more healthy, that is healthier, that is more fulfilling, um, and possibly even lead them to Christ, God willing. Um, I honestly think that and my videos serve that function. Now, if you want to talk about like in a social setting, what am I doing? If we were talking about more practical, quote unquote, political concerns, one of the other purposes of theory crafting would be to really be able to know what you believe and know what you believe and why you believe it. You have to be able to explain to somebody, or at least yourself, explain to yourself why you believe in what you believe. You can't just, uh, I mean, like, how should I put it? Like, most people are not sophisticated thinkers, okay? That is a given. And because being a sophisticated thinker requires actually devoting the time, like putting in the effort, putting in the time to do these things. And most people are too busy doing whatever. Like they're taking care of their family. They are taking care of their families. They are doing their jobs at work. Um, they're too busy doing that to think about why they believe things. And and that's and that's fine. But if you're in YouTube, if you're in idea space, you're in an idea space. So it's really incumbent on you to be able to understand for yourself why you believe something and how you can justify that in a rational way that doesn't make you look like an idiot. All right? That's really all we need. There are certain, like, even if you believe in Christianity and believe in faith, um, if you look at the great Christian apologists of old, they they gave they gave evidence. They gave evidence and argument for their religion. They did not make assertions without proof. They didn't rely on just kind of nambly pambly, just uh, uh, sort of uh, sort of wishy-washy proofs. You have to where you just kind of say, "Oh, look how pretty this is." Not that aesthetic arguments aren't arguments from aesthetics aren't useful, but the aesthetic argument should be complementary to the main rational argument, which is that our faith is true. We do not believe because it just makes us feel good. We believe in this because it is true, and the beauty of it flows from the truth, because truth and beauty are interchangeable. A truly beautiful thing is true, and a truth and any true thing is beautiful. That's what traditional Christian teaching gives us that insight. And even if you aren't a Christian, you really ought to take this kind of scholastic view seriously, because it was and still is a highly rigorous ideological philosophical project that is unjustly neglected, in my view. Honestly, the neo-scholastics are unjustly neglected, and if you want, for those of you who are like into Moldbug, he tells us to read old books. Um, the you can't get much. You can't do worse than the scholastics. You can't get much better than them. because they are the pinnacle of Christian teaching, I believe, at least in the modern day. In any case, one of the things that we also neglect is the importance of dialogue. Um, People in idea spaces, there's this common meme on the right wing that debates don't do anything, and that's true as far as it goes. In a debate, if you get into a debate, you're not necessarily going to, um, what we call intellectual blood sports doesn't actually, at the end of the day, really do much in the ways of like convincing the other person. But especially when you're very combative, but having a dialogue with somebody and trying to convert them, or failing that, trying to convert their audience is never a futile effort. I believe. If we can, if you now, granted, you could, if you are like me and you're not a good debater, um, maybe you would want to not take on someone who is a very experienced sophist like Vaush is. But other than that, you can't lose when you go and debate somebody, because with the purpose of converting. That being said, if you don't think that that you would be able to convert somebody or get them to, then you aren't going to be able to. Then I would advise against debating them. Um, I would also say that, um, like, going on there to just shit post is never helpful. It doesn't look good for you. Um, I would also, I mean, the most effective shit form of shit posting, like the most effective way to embarrass somebody is just to ask them questions that they cannot answer. And if they are if they are like very humble, if they're a very humble guy, then they won't embarrass themselves. They'll just say, "Well, that's a very interesting question, but I'll have to look into that later." But if they're very arrogant, then they'll you can just give them the rope to hang themselves with. You can just ask questions, and they will and they will just explode. Either they'll get mad at you for asking reasonable questions, which is never a good look, or they will uh, just kind of, or they'll give you an answer that they're just coming off the cock, that they're just making up off the cuff. They have no, and then you can just poke holes in that. And I think the goal in any conversation, the first step to conversion is understanding, right? And that's key here. You want the other person to understand you, and you want to be able to understand the other person. And if nothing else, if you're able to better understand the other person in the debate when the debate is over, then that's actually a victory for you, because then you would be able to create a psychological profile of that person and better predict what they're going to do. You will be able to understand that person's ideas better than they do, and especially better than they know yours. Um, and on the off chance that they do learn about your ideas and really understand them, that's one step closer to them coming to the right conclusion. Because the truth, because truth itself does have a magnetic pull. We are we have a natural tendency towards the truth that is only inhibited by various idols and false and distractions that exist. But the truth in its raw, naked form can be is very enticing um, to all but the most corrupt of minds. So that's something that needs to be put out there. And that's why I don't think that theory crafting in general is a bad idea, because it is the pursuit of the truth. It is the pursuit of and that's really what matters in the end. Now that said, um, the theory crafting that I try to do on my channel is not meant to be something very much airy and up in the air. I don't do a lot of complex metaphysics, and I don't get into the weeds of the latest scientific technical fields and whatnot. Um, it's my interests aren't purely academic. I am interested in applied ethics. Now, in ethical theory, there are three different main fields of ethical theory. There is meta-ethics, normative ethics, and applied ethics. Meta-ethics is about how we talk about ethical statements. Like, what is the nature of an ethical statement? Um, how should we talk about ethics? The positions of meta-ethics include the kind of questions that come up in meta-ethics are things like, is morality objective? Is morality or is it are moral statements just an expression of one's emotional state or one's personal feelings, or is there something more to them? Those are the kinds of things that are asked by meta-ethics. Next to meta-ethics, there's normative ethics. Normative ethics asks us, what even is morality? Is morality, and the three main positions in normative ethics are virtue ethics, uh, virtue ethics, deontological ethics, and consequentialist ethics. Um, Now, the way I would put it is virtue ethics is about moral character. It emphasizes the importance of character traits or virtues. Um, Deontological ethics focuses on moral laws, like rule following, and the and consequentialism obviously deals with consequences or results. Now, on all three ethical forms, virtue, character traits, moral rules, and consequences all play a role in all three forms of normative ethics. But um, but in each ethical form, the emphasis is different. So you are so virtue ethics puts the emphasis on virtue, and things like consequences and uh, things like moral rules are sort of more instrumental towards ethics, towards the attainment of virtue. Whereas a deontological ethicist might say that um, the that we need to obtain certain virtues to follow rules. I would say that we need to follow these rules to obtain certain virtues. And the distinction is, in some cases, academic, but I think it leads to some very important consequences when we get into the field of applied ethics. Now, applied ethics is where we ask moral questions about specific issues. Like, for example, genetic engineering. What is the morality of genetic engineering? Or should it be allowed? If so, in what circumstances? Um, what does a moral application of genetic engineering look like? And we can go on and talk about all kinds of different things. Like applied ethics can be ethics applied ethics can be applied to really any aspect of life. Like, what are the ethics of science? What are the ethics of doing philosophy? What are the ethics of politics? What are the ethics of political activism? What are the ethics of online dating, and so on and so forth? Applied ethics can be applied to any aspect of life, and that's why I don't think that my theorizing in, is somehow impractical. And the notion that it is kind of it just kind of ignores the whole nature of what I'm trying to do with my channel, I think. Um, but even if there wasn't like a direct application for the kinds of theories that I do, uh, theorizing in general is not pointless if the purpose of it is to discover new truths, and to teach people and to convert them to the truth. So, um, I would like to sort of get into uh, get into a recommendation for an article. Here's a let me show you. Here it goes. So this article was written back in 2019 by one of my favorite philosophers, Dr. Edward Feser. And Dr. Feser is talking in this article about 5 lessons from Saint Justin Martyr. Saint Justin Martyr was one of our first great apologists. He was an early church father, and he shows us how um, the rationality of Saint Justin's faith did not detract from his zealousness. In fact, he was very clear about what was the consequences of faith. He made great arguments. Lesson one, he had the faith has no place for fideism. So we have to provide evidence and rational proofs for what we believe. It's lesson two. The point of dialogue is conversion. Like I said earlier, um, we have to be able to interact with views that are opposed to us, and be able to win converts, if not from like the big bread tubers, then from their audience. Like you're just doing a service if you are able to convince people that these people over on BreadTube are like grifters essentially. Um, damned if you don't. Where this does apply a lot to a lot more to Christians, but it's important to the emphasize the necessity of being good, and use this kind of highly moralistic language, even if even if it uh, even if you even if it's offensive to people, because it's good. Sometimes it's necessary to shock people out of their complacency. Like this can apply to secular thinkers. If you think that leftism is the death of Western civilization, then you need to be able uh, to say that to a normie and explain why leftism is the death of Western civilization. If you think that this kind of secular liberalism is going to send people to hell, you need to be able to say that to other Christians and explain why that is in very clear and precise terms. I'm not saying for you to get emotional about it, but it's good to give these kinds of stern warnings, use these kinds of that kind of polemical language when necessary. Again, it doesn't mean you need to be needlessly rude, but it does mean that you have to be able to use that kind of harsh language in order to shock certain people out of their complacency. Uh, and by the way, I think that a lot of the modern church, the problems with the modern church are caused by that kind of complacency. But that's neither here nor there. Um, the fourth lesson is martyrdom, is obviously. Now, people who think now this does not mean like going out and trying to get killed. Right? That is stupidity, because the regime, all the regime will do is make you out to be a terrorist or something. However, if you are just being a good person, and like the thing about the modern day West is that it's so corrupt that being a good, sensible person is is starting to become illegal. And if you don't believe me, you can look at there are there are articles out there about how like there are people who are being politically persecuted just for having the wrong opinion, just for having an opinion that the left doesn't agree with, and not for anything they did. And the opinions being espoused, like how we shouldn't want people who are native to a country, the native population of a country, to be replaced by foreigners for the sake of like some political coalition, or that we shouldn't be allowing sodomy in our country. Sodomy is a sin that will send you to hell, and we shouldn't be allowing it in a movement that calls itself conservative. It shouldn't be a fundamental value in that movement. That is, and if you're saying these kinds of things, if you're just being a good person, and the regime comes after you, you should follow the example of the Christian martyrs, um, and the regime will come after you, and you'll have to be very stoic and courageous in the face of that kind of persecution. Um, this doesn't mean again. This doesn't mean like we should stop being anonymous when we can. Well, this doesn't mean that we should go. Neither does this mean that we should go seeking this out. Um, but if it happens, it happens, and that kind of martyrdom will only make our cause stronger. Because the stead and this especially applies to Christians, because as Christians believe in two things that makes our martyrdom worthy. First off, martyrs. those who are martyrs are will go to heaven. That's what we believe. We believe that those who are uh, martyrs have a better chance of getting into heaven. The second thing is that we believe that no matter how powerful the forces, like earthly political forces are, we believe that God will ultimately, the creator of the universe is ultimately on our side. Um, and that our cause will triumph over the enemy in the long term. And so we have to go and do likewise. That's lesson number 5. We do not if we and I think Edward Facer puts it best when he says this: where Saint Justin and his generation were intellectually rigorous, we are woolly-minded and sentimental. Where they insisted on conversion and orthodoxy, we tolerate grave error and immorality, lest we hurt anyone's feelings. Where they warned sternly of eternal damnation, we pretend that all is well and thereby endanger souls. Where they did not even fear death, we are frightened by bad press. Where they won the respect of their persecutors, we have earned the contempt of the secular culture we flatter and endlessly compromise with. They converted the world, whereas the world is converting us. They had things hard in this life, but have things easy in the next. We want things easy in this life, and we will find them hard in the next. They were doing something right, and we are doing something wrong. We need to return to their example. What this requires, as St. Justin shows, is more intellectual muscle, more moral austerity, more the doctrinal consistency, more holy intransigence, fewer apologies and more apologetics, less comfort and more suffering. We need to be less effeminate and more like our fathers. Powerful words from Dr. Fazer, and I think that even if you're not a Christian, you should be very much in that mode of thinking. You should be willing to go the distance and try and uh, find out how what am I doing wrong, and try to fix that in your behavior. Because at the end of the day, it does start with you and what you can do for your community. I mean, that's it, and that's really what I would say to that. Now, I would like to mention one last thing about this, and this is more of a call to action to people who want to get involved in ideas spaces. All right. So recently there were a series of live streams, little live streams. I watch some of the like quote unquote classical liberal types because it's always useful to see what the normies are doing. And so so recently there was this guy, you might have heard of him, Carl Benjamin. His reputation precedes him, and yes, he's kind of cringe, but he made an interesting point here about how um there's so few conservative theoreticians, and here's Sebastian Gorka. And I think Gorka gave a terrible answer to that question. Why are there so few theoreticians? Why is everything being defined by the left? Why are the left churning out midwits? Now the dumb answer is that the left is collectivist and the right is individualist. If only it were that simple. I mean, because then we would have like dozens of alt-right intellectual types. But no, that's not it. What really is it lies in, there was this there was answered by this one blogger, Thrown an Altar, that I personally do recommend his blog. It's a very old blog, long running. I don't agree with everything he posts on here, but it's very good. Um, and he writes about how there is just this lack of a traditionalist tradition. That is to say, the problem is one of institutions. The left has educational institutions on their side, and so they're able to churn out theorists like by the dozens. And the right doesn't have those kinds of intellectual institutions on their side, so they can't afford to churn out such all these theoreticians. And so what ends up happening is we have to resort to autodidactism, self, being self-taught. And 90% of when it comes to autodidactism, Sturgeon's law applies. 90% of everything is crud. So, yeah, that's really what we're facing now. Now the solution here, this post, it says, to that end, Moldbug again offers worthy solution. Using technology, we can access old books that our progressive friends in the establishment have no interest in letting anyone know even exist, and which most of them, having passed through a progressive education in themselves, aren't even aware exist. Major works should be done on creating a conservative traditionalist intellectual repository and finding a way to publicize its existence so broadly that people are aware of it and can use it as a resource. Something along the lines has been already done for K-12s for homeschoolers, rather than itself rather imperfect, but for advanced education. So yeah, that's really what we should be going at. And the people I see doing this are actually people like Imperium Press, who published stuff like American Extremists and Nemesis, along with the classics like Homer's Iliad and some of Thomas Carlyle's works. Very good stuff. We need more publishers like that, high quality publishers, especially. We shouldn't be um, we should we honestly need better editors on the right. Um, that's why I've been reading up on how to edit, how to be a better writer. Um, because I mean, editing in general is just good, because then you can just edit everything, not just like intellectual essays, but also pamphlets, advertisements, things like that. You can learn how to market better, and you can even learn how to do social media posting and edit those better. That's always useful. Um, yeah, just higher levels of professionalism on the part of the dissident right is it should be what we're aiming for. Yeah. All right. So yeah, there's a oh, I have a comment here from ZS, two of them actually. One of them is saying, Sargon said in one of his live streams, our next meme should be to call leftists French supremacists because they follow French ideals. LMAO. Well, in that case, I too am a French supremacist because the people I follow, the peoples whose ideals I follow are from Joseph de Maistre and from and I also follow the ideas of the some of the French absolutist Catholic thinkers. Um, so, I mean, does that make me a French supremacist now? I mean, that's just Sargon being dumb. But it's, I mean, part of the problem is that leftism advertises itself as being universal and rootless. These ideas have no root. They're cosmopolitan, so everybody can and should adopt them. Uh, they're quote unquote universalist in that way, whereas a lot of that and that's honestly why that kind of meme will never work really. It just kind of it'll be drowned out by the waves of leftists saying that our ideas are just the universal truth. And you can only combat that by positing your own universal truths, because universal truths trump particular truths. It's just a fact. Now, now we do have to be sure to ground universal truths in particular traditions and be able to know the history of our traditions. And that's because that's what makes ideas strong. Ideas without any kind of particular instantiation, or just kind of without any particular context in the culture, are just kind of vacuous. And this is why you see, as the liberal tradition, as the tradition against tradition advances, it becomes more vacuous, more sentimental, more airy, and less concrete. Um, I mean, as much of a kind of paradox it might sound like, you need to ground universal ideas in a particular tradition. A particular tradition that aims at universal ideas is what we should be striving for on the right. Um, Now, ZS is here saying, I've been reading American Extremists. It's decent, but I'm not really sold on the psychobabble. Um, I don't think it's psychobabble. Certainly, there's a Freudian element to it, and that might raise some hackles amongst people here. Um, but psychobabble is, but I wouldn't dismiss like highly technical terms as psychobabble or as nonsense unless you really are understanding the core assumptions. Like if you look at the core assumptions of this gobbledygook, and it's just pure nonsense, then you can dismiss, yeah, that's just babbling, because you're just using fancy words not to say to just not say much. But if the but sometimes technical language is called for when you're trying to be as precise as possible. Uh, Technical language in jargon should be a way of adding precision and increasing understanding, and not um, and not obfuscating. All right. So that's all I have for today. I hope that it's sort of rambling, but I hope today that I've given you some good reasons why you should go and hit the books, as it were. There's a lot for you to learn out there, and I honestly couldn't recommend it more. In any case, I'll leave you at that. You all have a wonderful day.